Welcome
to the Bring Me to Life podcast.
It's time to wake up
and shine on. Hello, hello. Thanks for waking up and shining on with us. It's Shannon Shine here.
Hello, it's Selomon. I'm glad to be here with everyone.
Yeah, I'm excited about this episode because last discussion we talked about galactic divinity. And sometimes we get pretty like spacey and galactic up on here. And I have just been kind of tuning into different communities lately, and the starseed discussion has been just popping up everywhere. And so many people will ask where I get a lot of my kind of galactic information. And other than just channeling it through dreams and personal experiences, I have read a few different documents and informational pieces. But one of my favorite is a book called The Prism of Lyra. I talk about it quite frequently, don't I?
Yeah, she's like, I really want you to read this book, Prism of Lyra.
Well, I like it because I am so curious about like the history of starseeds, and like people will be like, what's a starseed? And I try to explain that it's more of like an energy and that we're all starseeds and that we all have this like different background because our energy had to come from somewhere. And this book, it's an exploration of galactic heritage. It's channeled by Lyssa Royal-Holt and Keith Priest, and the version I'm reading from is like a revised and updated version that I got a few years ago when I started really wanting to know more about my sort of like alien connections, because I was having dreams of all these different beings, and it got pretty weird for a while, and I didn't even want to talk about it until I started realizing that I was so not alone. There's so many people that have these like galactic questions and connections.
Yeah, it definitely can be a scary topic for some people, and it can be kind of like a far out there topic. And I want to say that we can come into, wisdom like this with a grounded energy, with, a more homey, safe kind of vibe with it. Totally. And I think our souls, we're not just our bodies, our physical bodies, we're more than that. We're souls. And I mean, the way I see it, the divine is it just expanded to this kind of universe, and everything in it is part of the divine. And it's a lot like our atoms, how it looks a lot like a solar system. And so when you hear about this book and about this kind of information, I just say, try to come at it from a grounded perspective, one that feels good for you.
Totally. I think one of the reasons I enjoy this recommendation specifically is because it talks about a lot of things more as an archetype rather than an absolute. And in the beginning here, I'm going to read the introduction. I'm going to like jump around it a little bit. And it talks about how you can take this for, what resonates for you. And it's just channelings that they've done different research over the years. And it's just a different perspective. And I can't say that I even agree with all of it. And I think some of the things are evolved. There's some different general discussions and things like that I think as beings were evolving through as well. So this was actually channeled, I believe, back in like the 70s and 80s. And we are going through quite an awakening and new understanding now. So everything's evolving. We do have a chat happening if you're listening live at bringmetolife.com, and we would love for you to put any questions in there if you have them. I have the book here, and in the back there's actually a little glossary that has some of the more popular known starseed lineages, and we can touch on any that may come up specifically. And if you're listening on replay, you can join us in the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook, where we also love to continue these discussions.
We sometimes will ask questions in there about something that relates to something we said on the podcast, and it's just a way for us to be more interactive with all of you, and so we do appreciate we appreciate you and your action into the community.
Yeah, helping build the community, and there are people in the chat, so I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. So Sela's going to help me be commentary, and maybe if you have questions that come up too, we can just kind of discuss them, and you can help me hold on the chat.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to figure out how I wanted to share this book, and like I said, I might not read it every single paragraph. I'm going to kind of jump around into where it's channeled, and I do urge you to check it out. I think my copy was literally like $7, but you can find free PDFs of it online. It seems to be a document that they want to get out there and get more people discussing. It's a nice discussion piece. Cool. So I'm just going to dive right in.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So I'm reading from the introduction, and it opens with a neat phrase. It says, "It was not the mixture of men, of blood and breath, that made the beginning in the substance of your souls. Through the earth-born and mortal body is a frame of those things, but your soul has come hither from another place." And that is by a prophet whose name I cannot pronounce, Empedocles? Something like that. Yep, that's why I gotta get the book. I'm just
Empedocles.
messenger here. All right. So from the earliest days in Earth's recorded history, there has been a bittersweet emotion that wells up within us as we gaze into the expanseness of the night sky. Some of us long for the day when the race can travel beyond the stars, and it is really just a hope for the future rather than a remembrance of our past. The human consciousness has intricacies that still remain unexplored. What stirs us to push evolution to its limits, we ask? Well, what drives us to create the dissension between the races of our planet? Perhaps it is possible that we are playing out a cosmic drama and have only temporarily forgotten the script. We know that what one country or race does upon the Earth also affects another, and this idea may also spread outward into the universe. Perhaps what we do here affects countless other civilizations on other planets. And could we really be all that linked together? So the information presented in this book, in this sharing, is a compilation of years of insights, deductive reasonings and channelings, and meticulous cross-referencing of various different channels has been conducted by the researchers.
So, yeah, there's a lot of channels.
Definitely.
A lot of different ways that wisdom can come through.
Yeah. Just getting a drink here. Make sure you guys stay hydrated when you take in all this galactic information. Help keep you present here as well. All right, so it says that there is no claim that this is the ultimate truth of our galactic family's emergence into this reality. If it works for you, use the insights given here as a catalyst for your growth, but if not, perhaps it can lead you one step closer to your own personal truth.
At least you're taking a step. If you don't resonate, then you know that you don't resonate, so that's like a step forward.
Definitely. It says one of the most important ideas to accelerate the human potential is the allowance of all truths to be a manifestation of one truth, whatever it may be. So through this allowance emerges unification. If nothing else, we can let this book be a fun to read or discussion, interesting and stimulating to your imagination. Your belief is certainly not required, but your willingness to be an explorer is. So hopefully if you're still listening, you're here and ready to explore.
So get ready. Open your mind and get comfortable.
It says there are certain assumptions carried throughout the material that are a foundation for the rest of this galactic information. One of these is the idea of reincarnation in the infinite nature of consciousness. It is not necessary to embrace this concept in order to grasp the material, but it will allow you to have a more expanded view of this bigger picture we're about to discuss. Another assumption presented is the idea that each being possesses a higher awareness. That kind of resonates with the idea that we're all star seeds. We each have the ability.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is purported that regardless of the level of existence a being is chosen for a given lifetime, it still retains an awareness, a conscious or subconscious knowing of its connection to the whole and its own divine identity. which I think is what we discussed a lot last week with galactic divinity. It says this concept connects us within the idea that it is we and we alone who control our destinies. Therefore, evolution is in our own hands. Throughout this book, the assumption will also be carried that the whole or integrated mass consciousness of our galactic family has always existed. For the purposes of the rest of the information, there needs to be some parameters. We're going to refer to the beginning of the story as being the dimensional infusion and the end as the integration. So, in many cases, it uses different terms, which I wanted to read the introductory part of this because I think this is the part where people get so confused and they start to be like, well, what is a Pleiadian, or what is a Lyrian, or what is a Syrian, or a Vegan, or any of them. And it's mainly that we have created labels to categorize different archetypes. And in general, these labels are fluid, more denoting a realm or vibrational awareness than an actual fixed idea or identity. So, in this case, such as Lyra, for example, the possibility is respected that the very stars spoken of that were Lyra have actually now become black holes and white holes many times over. So, they're considered to be spoken of as ideas now rather than concrete points because there's no place in time and space right now that is considered Lyra. So, these ideas carry weight as they were something that happened in history or legends, and they give importance to the other star systems and help build its history. So,
I think that's very, interesting that it's talking about places that could now possibly be, white holes or black holes, whatever it might be. But yet, there is a possibility that even though a star has died and created a black hole, its light could still be traveling. So, people have different perspectives. They could still see something existing.
Yeah, so I got into this concept of different starseeds and energy because I felt connected to the word, specifically Lyra, before I ever knew that it was a star system, before I knew that this book, part of the reason I found the book Prism of Lyra was because I kept hearing this word in my dreams, and it was connected to these like cat-like people, like the Avatar movie that I talk about all the time. But in general, like, it felt like something unlocked in my consciousness to make me aware of that. And another movie that really kind of like put a whole visual to it, I think, is called Valerian. At the very beginning, the guy gets this like vision of this species, and it's very, very Lyrian, and it explodes. That planet explodes, and it sends out a beam of light that in kind of influences or like infuses the consciousness into him.
He basically receives like a signal, receives an image or a dream, or basically like an entire experience of of a personality,
all through like a beam of light that just like pokes him for a second. And it also reminds me of an episode of Star Trek where Picard gets hit with a beam of light and has an entire lifespan, and he gets to like understand how that whole species lived for a while.
Yeah, well, in that episode they were checking out some random it was like a time capsule or something that they came across, and they activated it, and Captain Picard, got hit, and then all of a sudden he lived through this entire experience because the civilization who put out that whatever it was they picked up, they wanted it so that whoever came across it would experience their history, would experience as if they were like living there with them, so that their civilization would live on.
And I think that's a lot of what's happening to starseeds, is we're receiving those fractals of light from these different consciousness, as well as it's programmed into our DNA. Like, we're born of these different lineages, and different families carry different lineages in them. And it kind of discusses that in later chapters of this book.
Very nice.
Might have to get some more fresh water here in a second. Cool. So, it says the Dogon tribe legends, the Sumerian texts, and the ancient Egyptian writings all claim contact with beings from other star systems, and these legends must have come from somewhere. Though their language and contemporary style of expression differ slightly, The consistency of their content is beyond argument. So, information about the past of the human race can enrich our lives here on Earth, and if we are to truly transform, it will be through the infusing of awareness onto our world, not using the awareness to escape from our responsibilities as citizens of the Earth and galactic family. So, lots of good stuff in here.
Right. We're not trying to bypass what needs to be healed and acknowledged.
I'm going to take a second and grab my water from the other room.
Shannon's going to take a second, scoot away. She's going to go get some water.
Yeah, if there's anyone in the chat, I would love to know what galactic energies have called to you. Have you ever seen yourself as a different species or in a different world? I would love to know. Maybe you could share any sort of way you're connected in that energy.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want all of us to take a quick breath here. So exhale your current breath. And let's take a deep inhale together. And just hold it for a moment. And let it all go. Just clear, your mind and begin to notice anything that comes up as we bring these topics up. I have some connections to... it's interesting for me because I am really interested in space and in this, galactic heritage and all this kind of stuff. But I also feel like I've been on Earth for a long time, and sometimes I don't have the similar experiences of feeling like I'm from somewhere else. So it's interesting to me.
But you also sometimes have a connection to other ancient Earth civilizations.
Yeah.
So there's just some energy stemming from somewhere there.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely resonate with Lemuria a lot. And, like I said, I definitely resonate and vibe with a lot of the, other possible realities, like the Galactic Federation and, other places. I just am I don't know if I feel like any of them are home.
Maybe as we read more of this book, you'll get more connected and tuned in.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I wanted to share this with you guys on the podcast is because I've been trying to get Celia to read this book for over a year, but I also give him lots of other books to read. And I thought maybe if I shared it here, we would all learn at the same time. So, cool. Let's skip up to the first actual chapter called Dimensional Infusion. It says, with its celestial keys, its cords of air, its frets of fire, the Sandman's great alien layer rising through all of the sevenfold bars from Earth unto the fixed stars. Which is a message from Longfellow on Lyra from the Occultation of Orion.
Orion.
Yeah. All consciousness and energy was once fused into it and integrated into whole. This whole was aware of aspects of itself, but in a different way from individualized consciousness. In Earth's present development, the self is recognized first, then society, and then finally the whole. All that is, or God, and separation is still created, and the separation from the source is yet an illusion. The illusion is a tool that provides the whole with the necessary lessons and challenges it needs to experience in order to reintegrate back into the source. Before its fragmentation from the source, the whole existed in another octave of dimensional reality. From this realm of unification, portions of all that is wondered what it would be like to fragment and temporarily forget an integrated existence. So, in shorter terms, basically, the all that is, or source, was like, I want to know what it's like to have experiences, and exploded into all of these different experiences to witness each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when a sun explodes, it begins to create new life. Like the gravity begins to pull all of those chemicals together, creating new life. Like a new star will be born, new planets will be created, and that's like life just multiplying.
It says the force of this thought on such a mass level began to create a fragmentation. The illusion created from this fragmentation would be a challenging forgetfulness, in which consciousness would need to create from its own divine nature the remembrance to once again unite, which is why we like to say wake up and shine on, because you are remembering through the consciousness of your divine nature, who you are. So it says, what has been termed the creation is indeed this fragmentation, or more descriptively, the dimensional infusion. That's a pretty cool term. Dimensional infusion. The whole's initial curiosity about a fragmented existence actually created the reality itself. It required a shift in perspective, focus, or frequency. And as a part of the whole, aspects of the galactic family were partially responsible for laying out the blueprint that was to guide their development. Therefore, the statement, we are God, actually has a viable meaning. So basically, God, source, the ultimate energy, was like, I want to know what it's like to experience all things at once, and exploded, created all these different like fluctuations of energy that wanted to interact with each other. And that's why we are creators.
Yeah, I think it's really special that we're all in that opportunity, in that place of opportunity, is we get to be creators and we get to create. And, you know, I seen a quote that I really like, and it's like, you know, life is God's gift to you, and you being creative is your gift get back to God.
Definitely, because we're helping it witness itself. That's how we're going to get closer to being one ultimate energy again.
Yeah. You don't have to say God. It could be the divine too, for anybody who doesn't like the God word.
The part of the whole, as it was saying in the book.
Part of the whole.
So the blueprint that was laid out and contained many different ideas. It was first held in the notion that polarity and fragmentation would be the norm, and the encoding in the blueprint provided the option of free will on the part of each fragment of the soul. So we each got free will. The challenge was in remembering that each consciousness possessed it, and that the more free will is used, the more divine memory is evoked. When faced with a polarized reality, free will becomes the liberator, and when a soul forgets that it possesses free will, the lessons then become much more challenging, yet quite rewarding. Remember when you're in control of your reality, how much it shifts when you take that power? Isn't that crazy? It's pretty crazy. Another idea present in this chosen blueprint was that the fragments of the whole would be entirely responsible for their own actions during this state of amnesia. Whether or not it was remembered, every action taken would then generate a response from the universe. Some have called this karma. However, it is much more than an eye for an eye, but instead punishment for negative behavior. Instead of punishment for negative behavior, there is always the option for expanding one's awareness through it. Therefore, in a sense, wisdom erases karma. Though this may sound like the rules for some kind of cruel cosmic game, the outcome has already been decided, and with this in mind, it is not necessarily the destination that counts, but the journey along the way. And it is literally how the game is played. I think I like this book because I'm always talking about life being a game, too.
Definitely in some moments, stronger. It's like in some moments your vibe gets so high, you can definitely tell, like, the Matrix. You can definitely see code and crazy stuff.
Well, it's funny because it says another blueprint agreed to was the etherically generated code built into the fabric of the universal tapestry. This code would then allow the bipedal carbon-based humanoid forms to be the normal, naturally developing vehicle for the incarnation of the human-type consciousness on planetary structures. So, in human quick words, that's why most of us witness other alien formats in our minds to be some sort of humanoid, even if they don't look exactly like us, because consciousness of this format, like a speaking, wanting to interact, less animalistic consciousness wanted to have basically 2 legs, 2 arms, and that's what it goes on to say. This code exists on a meta-atomic level that science is just beginning to learn to measure. The symbiology of polarity plays out in the human body form. The Earth human is symmetrical, with 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, ears, etc., and the body is joined in a whole by a torso and a head. It was also decided that during the evolutionary development of the humanoid forms within the Earth's galactic family, that the male and female polarities would manifest in separate but complementary body types. This serves as a reminder that in order to create polarities, must always find this energy to be joined or integrated, and the notion is widely held that an individual has a tendency to feel most at one when he or she is joined with another in love or finds its own genetic balancing. Gender balancing? I don't know. I think that part's a little outdated because we're starting to realize that gender is non-binary. So I think basically what that little section is talking about is when we're finding peace within our own divine feminine and masculine energies, we can find balance to evolve. And I don't necessarily believe that we have to have another one, like another person, and be specifically in love to find that evolution. I think we find it more when we have our own balance of that polarity. So
yeah, it's a lot about finding balance within, and then you know the outer reflects. Yeah,
it's important to again, like, go with what works for you and your understanding to move forward in this concept as well. So it says, what was the actual process of the dimensional infusion? There exists within this time and space of fabric of the constellation Lyra what can be called a white hole. Compare this white hole to a prism, and in a passing beam of light through a prism, one gets a spectrum of light fragmented into 7 visible color frequencies. When a portion of the hole passed through the prism of Lyra, or the white hole, the consciousness was then fragmented into 7 vibratory frequencies that represent the mass consciousness of the Earth's galactic family. Each fragment then became conscious on all of these different frequencies or destinies. Frequencies were previously experienced as being integrated into the whole, like the white light. And when this portion of the whole passed through the prism, it manifested as 7 aware frequencies. Consciousness then also fragmented, and the fragments moved away from each other as the Big Bang Theory symbolically suggests, and the illusion thus arose that each fragment was very, very alone. The whole understood that the purpose of this experience was to learn to reintegrate from a point of separation. But how? As individual souls or in groups, the fragments then sought out the universe that was just created. The dimensional infusion not only created a consciousness fragmentation, but it also created the stars, planets, gases, molecules, and everything that basically makes up physical reality. However, the physical reality represents only a few of the energy frequencies that emerged from the fragmentation. As science has discovered, matter is densified in energy vibrating at a specific rate. Well, Celia just hit my mic. Sorry, guys. Every aspect of the universe is made up of energy. In Earth technology, it has not yet been discovered how to measure certain portions of this reality. So if technology possessed this ability, it's an infinite number of gateways into time, space, and dimension would be seen. And for the time being, the 7 frequency levels that Earth's galactic family fragmented into by bypassing the Prism of Lyra will then be explored. We're going to talk about them in just a moment. And it says, from this point forward, the term density will be used in reference to these different frequencies. So, cool. So I want to talk about these densities a little bit, and then it actually jumps into some different types of starseed energy. And I'll probably leave it at that for the night, but I do want to get to some of the different kind of names of starseeds, because sometimes just when a person hears them, it kind of triggers something in their heart space to like do your own research. So hopefully you're still hanging with me, and again, I'd love to hear your feedback on some of these concepts. All right, so first, density, the awareness as a point of physical matter. The frequency level is the most basic, and it provides the matter and energy for the creation of atoms and molecules. The basic life forms of mineral and water, for example, are all operating from first density frequency, and humans possess this frequency within themselves as well, and that's what helps make up our basic genetic codes. I thought that was cool, because you were talking about genetic codes earlier. Yeah. And that's why we really love water and minerals.
Yeah, water's great. You know, it's like...
I'm going to drink some.
The coolest substance. It's so beautiful and so nice, and it just forms into anything. It's like no form.
True. So second, density. The awareness as a line of biological matter or development of a group or species identity. The consciousness expressed by second density vibration does not possess self-awareness or ego, and most species within the plant and the animal kingdoms exist here. However, the placement and density depends upon the many additional factors, including the presence or absence of ego. We've got third density, which is the volumetric awareness, the ego, the loss of group identity, the development of an individual identity, and the ability to remember past and cognize the future while retaining present awareness. So it's basically talking about the different realities. So this is the 3D reality. You hear people talking about 4D, 5D, 6D. That's what this is talking about, is the different levels of awareness. So this is talking about 3D. This is the density where human beings emerge, and it is a vibration that creates the illusion of separation, and thus a challenge towards the awakening. Presently, humanity is going through a transition period into a fourth density reality. Reminder, this book was written in like the 80s. Right now we're moving into actually like a fifth or sixth dimensional reality, and I think I saw somebody in the chat earlier mention how we're in a new reality, and it's literally because consciousness and humanity is rising up into the fourth and fifth dimensions, and some of us are going faster than others, so that's why it's a little shaky. And it's just a matter of like being open to different concepts and what kind of energy you want to have in your reality. Some days I think I'm on a 4D, and some days I'm on a 5D. Some days I'm like in it and I'm on 60. So I, like, even as a person, we bounce back and forth. So again, where was I? Oh, so the fourth density reality, which can account for many rapid changes that the human race is undergoing. This is a frequency that expresses the most separation from the whole. That's why so many of us feel lost and confused. But it is from here that many lessons about integration are learned, in that this is the most intense of all levels in its cultivation of growth within the self. Dolphins and whales and other like creatures presently exist simultaneously in the third and fourth densities and are transitioning out of the third along with humanity. And the consciousness of primates exists in a third density as well. And the evolution of primates is becoming increasingly apparent as one begins to observe them displaying several characteristics that were once thought of as indigenous only to humans, such as different language acquisitions and different behaviors. I thought this was interesting to you, Silo, because you have talked about being a very earthly energy and also connected to whales. So...
yeah, when you said that about whales, I was like, what? So the whales are raising their consciousness along with us?
Yeah, they are taking us with them, and so are dolphins. I think that's why they're in
You said they're taking us with them?
Yeah, energetically, because they're having a high vibrational experience. So.
And it's adding to our
consciousness
raising.
Yeah, because think about it. They're some of the biggest creatures in this planet's vibrational field.
Yeah, I feel like, whales have always been the biggest mammal.
They're rather huge creatures.
They are huge.
It's hard to even wrap my mind around.
You ever seen a whale? It's so big and so ancient, and they swim around and sing all the time. And I was thinking about it, and it's a lot like being in space. They're a lot like giant spaceships. Like flying around in space, but it's water. It's our ocean.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. I'm going to talk more about 4D.
Okay.
So, talking about that fourth density, the containment of the volumetric awareness, the super consciousness, the reintegration of the group identity without loss of ego to identity. And as the vibration increases, the perception of past, present, and future become more fluid, along with the ability to interface with the multidimensional and multi-density realities. And negatively oriented consciousness becomes more difficult to maintain. That is why everyone feels like they're on a reality shift. The negatively oriented consciousness are becoming difficult to maintain because it is feeling frazzled. So as we are evolving, we are wanting to move more into a community mindset. But if there's this negative energy, it's hard to want to be a community with that. So that's why there's been such a polarity right now of like positive movements, negative movements, light and dark, what's good, what's bad. And people have been trying to find their place in the world and find their communities, whether it's with the starseed community or elsewise. I think that's why the politics were such a huge thing this present round too, because there was such a polarity there, and it really brought out the intensity of people's emotions.
It definitely brought out a lot of emotions, and politics always does, but this year seemed extra tense.
Yeah. It says presently on Earth, fourth density reality is overlapping the third. Again, this was in the 80s, so I think now we're in the 4th, 5th, and 6th. But in humanity's case, this can account for the increased desire for unity, peace, and unconditional love, as opposed to the illusion of separation that characterizes most in the 3rd density. The vibratory rate of one's reality is stepped up, and therefore one may be faced with personal issues in a much more rapid and intense way when entering into 4th and 5th dimensions. It is easy to see how this is coming into play with thousands of individuals upon the earth who are currently going through different therapies, substance abuse programs, and engaging in humanistic efforts to better the planet. This is the frequency of responsibility, and this is the frequency when one begins to remember the encoding of your own free will and starting to take action in your life. And this is the last frequency where physical bodies are the vehicles for the expression of consciousness only, and hence many civilizations choose to spend long periods of time within this density, because we start to get kind of more energetic base. And I think that's why so many people are moving towards different forms of spirituality right now, because they're feeling this expansion outside their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're too big for their bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just had someone talking about that recently, feeling, so big. And I think it is a fascinating experience to open up your consciousness and awareness so much that you expand beyond your body and begin to, feel the room around you, or, maybe expanding your aura out.
Well, I think that's what they start talking about a lot in the 5th and 6th densities, because it says the experiential awareness of the I as a group identity is not bound by linear time or space. So it's not bound by your body.
Mm-hmm.
In this density, the sentient consciousness begins to awaken to its heritage, and this is the density of wisdom. As one awakens the wisdom within, they are very often want to share it with those who are still focused in the lower densities. So if you find yourself awakening and you're like, I want to share this with everybody, maybe they're just not quite on that level yet. That doesn't mean you're any better or less than them. It just means they haven't tapped into that frequency. Like radios can only tap into frequencies in a certain radius. So maybe they're just not like ready to tune into that frequency yet.
Mm-hmm.
A 5th density being merges with its family of consciousness, or the oversoul or higher self, or community, if you will, and it then begins to remember. And this is the 1st density in which the non-physical orientation is started to be experienced, and you can start to check in with your more spiritual form. So there's no clear-cut distinction when transitioning from 5th to 6th and even to 7th densities, because these densities are not physically oriented. So there's just a lot of blending and transitions. It's kind of like when you're in the middle of a radio frequency and you can get like 3 networks at once.
Mm-hmm. That can be quite confusing. Where's this coming from?
Yeah, because it says in the 6th density is the awareness of the dimension itself, and it's often called the Christ consciousness, which a lot of people have heard about Christ consciousness, and it's this idea that it displays a frequency level equal to that of the Christ or Buddha, and from this frequency, the total remembrance occurs, and it begins taking responsibility for the whole rather than the self, and the process of progressing the self and progressing the whole become one and the same. So that's like when you start worrying about the bigger picture. You've already taken care of yourself so much in this egoistic body that you can then expand and really take care of a larger community or the world in a different way, because you've found a balance within your own dimensional density. So it's pretty wild stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So it talks about the 7th density. I guess I should just finish that part. It says awareness is the multidimensional experience, or the group matrix identity. And this is the frequency of total oneness or integration, and those who vibrate in this frequency are merged in the identity and become a mass conscious whole. And they magnetize to those in other frequencies and provide the current for the natural flow toward integration. And once the 7th density begins to reach its critical mass, they will then progress through the Prism of Lyra. From our point of view, it will then be kind of a black hole exit point for them and reach to the next octave where another adventure awaits. So they say that people reach a form of 7th density when they start crossing over into like a more transition spirit realm.
And that's when another adventure shall begin.
Yeah. So kind of just skipping through here. I want to get to the part more about specific
lineages.
Yeah, some different lineages, because I feel like that's what a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier, for anybody who is listening live right now with us, people in the chat, if you resonate with a certain lineage, let us know.
Yeah. Let's see here. So this talks a lot about soul fragmentation and different ways of evolution. Put a little note here. Maybe we can come back to some of this because it talks about DNA codes and the potential to become a different type of conscious being. So I'm going to skip through here. Cool. I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 2, and then we'll probably save more of this for a different day. So it talks about the creation of the galactic family, and it opens up with this little capture. It says, I am Ra, from whom time began, and I am the hub of a wheel in a day star hovering over an endless sea. I am not the harvest, I am the seed, and I am not the lyre, I am the song, and I will not pass away. And that is from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So it says, in time, in passing through the Prism of Lyra, the first fragmentation created a group of beings that could be called the Founders. The Founders embodied the group consciousness of what eventually became humankind, and they can project to a very high level of fourth density, but their natural state is non-physical. In splitting off from the portion of the whole that passed through the Prism of Lyra, they still retained a memory, if somewhat dreamlike, of the idea of integration and the purpose of the fragmentation. It is they who orchestrate the humankind's evolution, and they play the roles of the parent archetype, as which a male and female polarity balance occurs. So the divine femme, divine masculine type vibes. The Founders became aware of the blueprint that was chosen as they fragmented from the whole, and from this blueprint they knew that the children carry the encodings of the parents. So we create the same energy as the Founders. Since they played the parents' role, it was their responsibility to influence the growth of the new consciousness about to be created, and in doing this they became the blueprint. They began to understand and live it, and knowing that this would then encode future fragments. The Founders began to understand the natural energy patterns of the polarized reality just created, and it became obvious to them that the newly fragmented group of consciousness interfaces with specific realities and densities. Within 3 main points: 1, a point of pure positivity; 2, a point of pure negativity; and 3, the integrative point of the two. All interactions occur within the lines that connect each point, with a very few aspects of consciousness existing within the points of purity, and this realization inspired them to then understand a paradigm of polarized reality, which was something exciting and new to their understanding. The paradigm as it emerged for them is shown, and it is basically just negative pointing into positive, and in the center it says integrative point. So it's not much of a diagram that it's saying here. Moving forward, as they pondered the paradigm, they began to understand the mechanics of how the fragmented consciousness would once again merge back through the Prism of Lyra, and the linear model above can then be changed to bring out the triadic relationship of the light, dark, and gray areas. So this energy represents the probabilities of the different processes. And if a civilization or consciousness chooses the integration, the willingness to grow from the point of both polarities, they will naturally move toward an integrative point. So this continues to explain how the different lineages kind of break off. So when they believed they were ready, the Founders began another fragmentation, just as a portion of the whole became curious and created this realm from its thoughts. The Founders emulated their parents and exerted a thought throughout to create a fragmentation of themselves. This fragmentation occurred far and wide, and the individualized consciousness then sprang from the Founders' group of awareness and began to explore the universe. I could be wrong, but I believe that the Founders could also be part of like the Galactic Federation type energy. They're the ones who kind of connect into all these different lineages and help us share the remembrance.
There's an episode in Star Trek where a few of the different races come together, a few of the different civilizations, and they're trying to find this like crazy treasure hunt, and they all end up finding out that they all have, DNA from like one civilization. They like kind of shared their different DNA with, and it kind of created like a split of different species.
Yeah, and that's basically what it's saying happened with us as humanoids too, and that's why we have different races and skin tones and lineages, we are an extension of these different galactic families. It says that because of the fragmentation, every being that exists is in the galactic family presented here an extension of the founders. There are an infinite number of fragments in explorational journeys, and some of these fragments grew into civilizations that have played a part in the development of Earth. Some of those who have reference points in Earth's known reality will be explored. That's what I'm getting ready to talk about. Promise, guys, I'm getting to the even cooler stuff. It says, when the founders fragmented, some allowed their energy to densify sufficiently in order to enter a physical reality. The founders then had already chosen planets that could support the humanoid life. And then they gently guided these fragments into a physical third and fourth dimensional existence. And after time had passed, the fragments became more accustomed to physical existence and assistance from the founders, who still existed in smaller numbers and became less needed. So founders could also be considered to some as different fragments of the angels, like the higher ranking angels, because it is really kind of the evolved forms of the energies. So that's why there's different deities and goddesses and were representations that the founders came to like channel information to us. So the first area to be eventually colonized after the founders' fragmentation was in the general vicinity of the Lyra constellation. And most of the galactic family that has genetic connections to Earth have some sort of roots in the Lyrian system. And it was there that the first attempt at integration occurred, and the founders thought that it would be easy and predictable. Instead, humanoid life forms began to spread outward exponentially until a very intricate tapestry was woven, and the threads of the tapestry began to become entangled until eventually the origins of the thread became lost in the colorful maze of the tapestry's design. And the following that we're going to talk about are some of the main characters that have expanded from the original founders. So here we get into some of the titles of the Starseeds civilizations, and if one resonates for you, maybe do some research. I'm starting to see a lot more content out there for different civilizations because more people are uncovering and feeling safe to share this information. Because, for so long people were like, oh, that's crazy. But now it's starting to become more clear that we had to have come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Even my oldest brother, is talking about similar things to this, and it's somebody I would never have expected to come out to me about it.
Totally. Like, I shared a lot of this, the introduction, which it's a lot more wordy and like, okay, well, what's it all mean? And it's basically like a history lesson of where energy started before it even created these civilizations as we know them. So the first one talks about is Lyra, the general area of the birth of the humanoid race, and all humanoid races in our galactic family have genetic roots connected to Lyra, and it's a symbolic harp upon which the song of humanity is played, which I always thought was interesting that I was connected to Lyra, which is like the oldest civilization, which is why I think I like connecting to the Akashic records too, because it gives me the ability to tap into like all these different timelines. So then we have Vega, which is a star within the constellation of Lyra. In the descendants of Lyra, Vega birth raced a series of beings who manifested Lyra's opposite polarity, both in their beliefs and actions, and they were frequently dealing with conflicts between the Lyrian and vegan races. So there is the Apex planet, which is a planet within the Lyran system, which was the first attempt at creating an integrated society. So it had both the feminine and masculine polarities. Then there's the Sirius system, which is a Trinity star group, and it is known in Earth's mythology as the Dog Star. And Sirius was one of the first areas to be colonized by beings from the Lyrian star group. And Sirius embodied the energy of the triadic template and perpetuated the drive towards integration. So there is a large variety of different consciousness types that incarnate in the system, and they may have a lot of different physical makeups. So there's a lot of different people in blueprints that come from Sirius. Mm-hmm. There is the Orion system, and this is the main battleground for the challenge of polarity integration, and seeded from the Sirius areas, as well as the Lyra and Vega, there is a direct connection with Earth. And it talks about that in later chapters, how there is a lot of Orion energy rising up right now. And the fact that it was one of the main battlegrounds for polarity integration, I think personally is probably why we're having such a rise in the non-binary discussions, because a lot of the Orion blueprint is about breaking those gender norms and allowing a being to feel whole in their own entirety. So, and I find that pretty cool, because a lot of people I know that connect with the Orion system are very adventurous.
Fluid.
Yeah, fluid. It's a good term for it.
Yeah.
So then there's the Pleiades. A lot of people talk about the Pleiadians, and this was colonized by some more Illyrian offshoots or off generations. And this group is one of Earth's main genetic connections from extraterrestrial sources. So we have a lot of Pleiadian beings. Typically, they're said to have the blonde hair, blue eyes type energy. I'm finding that to be less and less apparent as we evolve. But I think that is actually why, like, Hitler and all that kind of occult energy was trying to focus on the blonde hair, blue eye genetic coding. They thought it had something to do with the the pure blooded genetic encoding or something crazy like that.
So it reminds me of Draco Malfoy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was visualizing too.
The Malfoy is like
needing that pure blood energy. But the Pleiades have they have two different sides to them. There's a lot of like love and light energy that comes from the Pleiades, and they can be either super positive and like welcoming, or they can be the opposite. So they're very like polarized. They're either super welcoming or super closed-minded.
That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like most of these civilizations are a lot like, the planet Earth, where not everybody is reflective in terms of, the heads of the government, for example.
Definitely. These were different civilizations in different species of sorts, but definitely different civilizations. So there were people that probably agreed with it and didn't fit the social norms as well. There were rogue souls that were visiting.
Yeah, and in a lot of the movies, you'll see like the different civilizations. Like there might be a whole bunch of them who are evil and like destroying other civilizations. But there's some characters that aren't about that and are trying to stop their own government.
Definitely, there's always some souls that are on their own mission. And it actually talks about this in the later in the book too, about how souls go through a journey and they go through these different like portals. I think we were talking about that in our discussion prior to the podcast with Antares, which if it doesn't mention here, I'll read that part too. But first it gives me Arcturus, which is an archetype or future self-ideal of the Earth. And Arcturus assists in healing personal and planetary consciousness. And its vibration, primarily the sixth dimension, has been attributed to the angelic kingdom. So a lot of people who vibe with Arcturus also connect with the angelic realms. So I have some different backgrounds in Arcturus energy as well. Then there's the Zeta Reticuli, which is a interesting civilization. It's more intimately connected with Earth in different ways. The Reticuli are primary group instigating the abductions, though, so they're a little bit more scary. So when people are like kind of freaked out by the aliens, it's probably something connected to this, because they're abducting different energies and having temporary detainments, because they are said to always return the souls, but they're very exploratory. And some of these different civilizations, they just have different ethics. So I understand why some people are concerned when we start talking galactic, but as you can hear, like, many of them are just trying to help consciousness and connect and understand binary and not binary and expansion.
Probably a lot of advanced civilization, I would imagine would just try to explore life and understand the nature of life, understand the fabric of, our universe and how it works. And yeah, it is kind of a bummer that some people have to want to go to war and cause conflict and all that kind of stuff.
Totally. So I'm going to jump now. This book has a really cool little glossary, and it has other types that it didn't mention in the chapter I was just in. And if you're enjoying this discussion, let us know if you would like to hear me read more of different parts of it, because it gets pretty in depth. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much jargon, but I do want to talk about some of these other ones. So like Silo has mentioned to me that he connects in some way with Antares. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier at the beginning, I don't feel like I have a home, but for some reason Antares just kind of fascinates me right now.
So it says that Antares is lying in the Scorpius constellation, which makes sense because you're a Scorpio, and Antares is considered a binary star of fiery red and emerald green, and Antares is the interdimensional bridge to Andromeda from our galaxy, and some souls during their physical incarnation choose to pass through the Antares gateway to reactivate their soul's memory and help awaken others in the Earth realm. So that would make a lot of sense that you have some connection to Antares.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was cool.
It is interesting that it says activating memory though.
Yeah, because you're helping people wake up and shine on.
Yeah, but I would originally believe that would mean activating memories from before incarnating.
Maybe that's why you're on this journey to do so.
Maybe.
So let's talk about Andromeda for a second.
Yeah.
Andromeda is a large spiral galaxy, and it's the closest to the Milky Way at a distance of 2.2 million light years. And the nature of the Andromeda realm is an abstract and fluid vibration in a dimensional doorway that exists in our nearby galaxy's neighborhood as a bridge. So the bridge is again Antares. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
It talks about...
So it has 2 stars, huh?
I think so.
One red and one green. That's kind of weird to think about, a sun being green.
It says a fiery red and emerald green, so I think it's just one star that flashes.
Huh.
So
what's the binary star?
you're doing that thing where
I'll let
you're
you know.
asking me too
I'm
many
gonna look
questions.
it up while you talk more, and I'll let it right now.
Sorry, I'm like in this zone. So
okay,
Ooh.
so it is 2 stars.
Oh, so it's 2 stars that travel together.
Yeah, binary star system is a system with two different stars.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know that there's a star that you and I used to look at with our friend Ashton, and we would call it the party star because it looked like it was flashing.
Yeah, what was that one?
I think it was Sirius.
Yeah, Series B or something like that.
Something like that. So yeah, this glossary is so cool. It's got so many different things, and it's got stuff about the angels, the angelic kingdom. It's also got something in here called the Black League, and we have a friend that talks about this a lot, and I've been trying to get him to read this book too, or them to read this book too. It says the Black League was an organizational resistance pattern developed during the Orion conflicts to counter the efforts of the Orion Empire, which is attempting physical and spiritual domination of the entire region. The Black League manifests not only as the underground paramilitary resistance organization, but as a spiritual and philosophical orientation that manifested in many forms. These patterns have attempted balance in other planetary systems and are presently playing out on Earth through the human reincarnation cycles. Crazy stuff. Just so many cool things in here. Christ consciousness is the aspect of a mass consciousness that recognizes itself as a single being, and this can be equated with a 6th density vibration. The term Christ is often misleading, and like Christ or Buddha, it is a level of consciousness without the duality and can be labeled as a 6th density or Christ consciousness. So, let's see what else wants to come out. The Dogon or the Dogon are the people of an African tribe living in the Mali Republic of Western Africa near Timbuktu, which that's crazy. For some reason, I didn't know that it actually existed, Timbuktu. And it was thought to have migrated from Egypt, and for many generations, they have possessed a knowledge of advanced astrophysics concerning the Sirius star system that they claim was given to them by beings from that system. Cool stuff.
What?
Yep. The Dogon.
And have you seen cave paintings and all kinds of other stuff? It does look like UFOs. Some of them look like UFOs.
Yeah. This book talks a lot about Egypt and hieroglyphs and like getting information from some like ancient scriptures. Like this is the Enki, or in Sumerian, the Enki means the Lord of the Earth, and he's considered to be the one who imparts the knowledge of civilization into humankind. And he was also known to the Babylonians as Ones, and to the and to the Egyptians as Pa, and was the god of wisdom and knowledge, and throughout time his symbol has been the snake. And according to the Sumerian text, Enki was the one who instructed Noah to build the ark so that humanity could be saved, and this was in direct defiance of orders of the Enlil, who desired the destruction of humanity. Then it continues to say that Enlil was, in this Sumerian, it meant Lord of the Air, and he was considered to be the chief of all the lands, and the Sumerians considered him to be the supreme. So Enki and Enlil were half-brothers who had the same father, and each claiming to be the firstborn, which caused each to believe he was the ruling deity. And the conflict is thought to be the source of many later conflicts between the gods that are then channeled out through humanity. So.
It's a lot to take in sometimes. I gotta say that.
Yeah, there's a lot more in here, and honestly, I love going through it and like learning new things, and I kind of hope that there's some more interest in it, and we'll go through it. And if not, we have some other really cool stuff that we're going to be sharing with you in future episodes. This is just kind of, where I'm at, and I've talked to a lot of people. I've been hanging out with the Paradigm Shift Central crew, and there's a lot of starseed discussion there. We have our friend Breezy that is doing Golden Guide Adventure. She's doing a whole Starseed
Awakening,
series. Yeah, the Awakening of the Starseed or something.
Starseed Awakening.
Yeah, so she's talking about her experience as a Starseed on Bring Me to Life Network as well. We had an episode where they talked about Starseeds in Incense and Whiskey, and I don't know if Starseeds specifically are touched upon in Through the Eyes of Angels and Shamanic Living, but there's definitely some other like angelic and galactic concepts that are mentioned throughout most of our different podcast series. So I just wanted to show a little bit of where I get some of my background from. As you can experience, it's kind of a wordy text, but there's some really, really cool mind-opening ideas here, and I'm hoping to get CeeLo as excited about this book as I am. Because like I said, I don't agree with all of it, but it makes me think, and I just so deeply feel that our energy had to come from somewhere beyond just here.
Yeah, I agree. I see, some planets and stars and things as not just a planet or a star. It's like an archetype. It's like a character. It could be an angel, and so I'm just really grateful that we are here together to learn about the stuff and to see what we resonate with and what we don't. And I appreciate everybody doing their best to keep an open mind and open ears and tune in here with us. It's been a pleasure to have you all here.
Definitely. Again, if there's something else you want to hear us reflect on, talk about, hit us up. Find us at the Bring Me to Life community on Facebook, or at Bring Me to Life Network on most of your favorite social media. And we just got, I think, our podcasts on even more platforms like Pandora and things.
Yep, we just got on Pandora.
So you can find us on your Amazon apps, your Pandora, your iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, iTunes, all of them. So check those out. Give us some reviews, some subscriptions.
Subscripts. Subscripts.
The feedback helps us a lot. It helps us get out there and continue sharing our message out into the world with awesome people like you, so that we can get you all linked up and vibing into a high vibration civilization. So I'm grateful that you all have been here too. So thanks.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for staying awake.
And shining on. For many of us, spirituality is just the quest to find essence or true meaning and to really just connect with a higher consciousness.
Connecting with your spirituality is very important in this life. By becoming mindful of all of it, you can realize where you are and if that is leading you to where you want to go.
Listen to the little simple things, because it's those little simple things that are going to shift you vibrationally in such a way that will prepare you to become very intuitively minded and ready to step forward on the next part of your path.
I hope you can feel the love that's inside you, it's inside me, that connects us.
Thanks for shining on with us.